Director at Econometrics, is in studio with us to talk about this. It's good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thanks, Leah.
So lovely to see you again. Why is the trade deficit regarded as a bad thing for any country?
Simply because it means that the country needs foreign exchange to pay for the additional imports in excess of the foreign exchange that it earns for its exports.
Yeah.
And that can be problematical.
Yeah.
In terms of getting that foreign exchange. Certainly in South Africa's case, we are now heavily dependent on the willingness of foreigners to buy our bonds and our shares in order for us to get that foreign exchange. Otherwise, the rand plummets.
Okay. Now that we understand that, let's look at what the problem here is. It seems that buying goods is cheaper when you sort of look overseas and you look at other countries as opposed to buying locally because of the pricing. And how do local manufacturers get to a point where they can become competitive and we support local as opposed to looking further ashore because it's cheaper?
Well, one of the natural adjustment mechanisms in economics is that if that process continues for too long, your exchange rate falls, and that on its own makes your goods cheaper and is more attractive to foreigners for you to export, and for foreign goods to come into your country more expensive, and so you stop importing them and you prefer to buy your own goods. But more fundamentally, South Africa needs to become more productive, and that implies improved education, skills, and a willingness to work.
Yeah, labour relations.
Labour relations
it's a huge
are very
issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How is it deterring this? I mean, what role does labour relations play in this? Let's talk about unions.
Take unions. They demand big wage increases or higher increase. And, you know, one has sympathy very often. You say, but that's not a very high wage. The fact is that in other countries who are exporting like crazy to South Africa, those wages are even lower. And so that's why those goods can be sold even more cheaply than they are in South Africa. So yes, we're looking after our workers, but it costs us in terms of having to then find that our imports are much cheaper than what we're producing the goods at.
It's a difficult situation because you want to look after the people of South Africa. You want to ensure that they earn a decent livelihood, but at the same time you want to be productive, and I suppose it's that battle. Let's just get back to the numbers now. The past month saw a fluctuation on the figures. Over what period can one get a correct perspective as to how things are doing?
You know, you really need a good 6 months or so.
Okay.
And the good news is that in the past 3 months, the trade deficit has narrowed compared with the first quarter of this year. But one senses that it still could maybe a little too early to be too optimistic about it. On the other hand, there are logical reasons for expecting the trade deficit to narrow. The rand has depreciated by about a quarter of its value in the last 2 years, even after taking inflation into account. And that means that South African goods, the adjustment that I was talking about earlier, has taken place, and South African goods are now cheaper than they've been at any stage in the past decade. So they're relatively attractive to export overseas.
Yeah, I mean, a trade deficit brings in foreign investors. I mean, that is can we say that?
No, well, no.
Not really?
No, you can't say that.
Okay.
And in fact, if you don't get foreign investors whilst you've got a big trade deficit, then your currency falls very sharply.
Okay.
And that's exactly one of the reasons why we haven't been getting quite enough to compensate for that deficit yet.
All right. Are there any positives? I'm dragging this out because I know I've got to do market indicators, but what are the positives?
Well, the positive is that the rand has fallen, and so it's now our goods are much cheaper and more attractive to overseas investors, and also imports are now very much more expensive. South Africa, and one classic example now is with tourism. South Africans are reluctant to travel overseas because it's become so expensive. Foreigners are pouring into this country. Yeah.
Oh, they absolutely are. I mean, they're loving South Africa.
That's right.
It's value for money. It really is. Azar, thank you very much for talking to us. Azar Jamin is the chief economist from Econometrics. All right, let's take a look at your market.